I'm going to read a book now. Here we go. Look, it's called Why Are There Monkeys and Other Questions for God? Okay, here we go.
Eternal, all-powerful, all-knowing. According to the authors of Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, those are the primary attributes of God. Of course, according to those same authors, timidity, mildness, and weakness are the primary attributes of women. So I take what said authors have to say with 1.5 pounds of salt. But that has nothing whatsoever to do with my story. I spent several decades not at all convinced that there actually was a God, but it wasn't a subject to which I paid much attention. I was what you might refer to as a closet agnostic. This agnostic lack of conviction did not, however, prevent me from routinely mentioning his name whenever I overslept, slammed my finger in a door, or got arrested. But we won't go into that at the moment. This lack of conviction also did not prevent me from occasionally crossing my fingers and toes and hoping. I said hoping, not praying. The concept of a praying agnostic is too weird even for me. But hoping that if he did exist, in addition to his other benevolent attributes, he would also have the ability to laugh. On those rare occasions when the thought of God did appear in my consciousness, I found myself thinking about the existence of heaven. That thought led me to the realization that if there was a heaven, I might want to go there someday, as opposed to that other place located somewhere decidedly south of south. And therein lies the rub. You see, due to the rather, let's just say, unorthodox life that I had been living, I stood absolutely no chance of walking through those proverbial pearly gates, unless the man in charge had the most bizarre sense of humor in the cosmos. And I ask you, what are the odds of that? It started with drugs. Of course, I'm a child of the 60s, so for me, pretty much everything started with drugs. It was just another in a long line of sad, sorry, self-indulgent nights, no different than any other until. They say they struggled to bring me back. They did everything they knew how to do. They held me under a cold shower, they slapped me again. They said they slapped, and then they slapped some more. At some point, they were slapping me primarily to vent their rage at my stupidity. It made them feel a little bit better, but it didn't do a thing for me. I was beyond their rage, because I was dead. 1 minute I was alive, the next minute I was dead. Drugs can do that to you, but I'm getting ahead of myself. It was 1950. Harry Truman was president, and everyone wore hats. I was born into a Jewish family. Jewish families come in 3 varieties. There are Reform Jews, Conservative Jews, and Orthodox Jews. My family was of the Reform persuasion. Reform Jews are people who cling to a tribal identity while knowing precious little about their tribal history. For Jews of all persuasions, Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year. It's the day set aside for what's officially referred to as the atonement of sin, and, of course, unofficially recognized as a sacred excuse to visit the golf course. Every year on that day, the Reform Jews of my community, dressed to impress, of course, attended worship services not in the Tony local temple, but at the Westchester Community Center just down the road, a place more often used by the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus and the Harlem Globetrotters. The temple was just too small to hold all those mink coats. So there I'd sit, hands folded in my lap, dutifully watching the rabbi and listening to the cantor. Unfortunately, no matter how hard I tried to focus on them, all I could see were dancing elephants, and all I could hear were dribbling basketballs. By the time I was 8 years old, I had concluded that if there were such a thing as the Holy Trinity, one of my best friends was a devout Catholic, it must consist of God, Selena the Elephant Girl, and Meadowlark Lemon. It was 1969. Richard Nixon was president, and everyone wore hair. I experimented with sex, drugs, rock and roll, and religion. In college, I majored in 3 of the 4. At various times and for various lengths of time, I was an agnostic, an atheist, a Rosicrucian, an existentialist, mandatory for all freshman English Lit students, a nihilist, mandatory for all sophomore philosophy students, and a Buddhist, mandatory for nothing, and preferred by 2 out of 3 flower children. I practiced yoga religiously, so to speak. Twice a day, I would contort myself into positions I can only fantasize about now. I treated my body like a temple, ingesting only natural products like brown rice, mushrooms, and heroin. It was 1975. Gerald Ford was president, and everyone wore heels. Was it too much of a good thing, or was it just enough of a decidedly bad thing? Either way, I was overdosing. As I lay dying, I prayed to every deity I had ever heard of, read about, or studied. I meditated on a framed picture of Swami Satchidananda. I chanted. I envisioned several Hollywood actors who had portrayed Jesus. I did everything I could think of, and then I died. I'd never heard of near-death experiences. For me, born and raised in and around New York City, bright lights and tunnels were nothing more than the basic ingredients of traffic jams. So imagine my surprise when I found myself suddenly floating in a gossamer tunnel that seemed to be made of light. A 3-dimensional pulsing white light. A warm 3-dimensional pulsing white light. A warm 3-dimensional pulsing white light that felt alive. It's amazing what a dead girl can do in 8 minutes. Take me, for example. I met God. I spoke to God. God spoke to me. And these are the words we shared.
And that's all for today.